Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the Steven Universe Retrospectives. And today we're going to be discussing episodes 35 and 36 of Steven Universe, Lion 3, Straight to Video, and Alone Together. And of course, let's talk about the odd numbered episode first. And in this case, Lion 3 is a lion-focused episode, as the title implies, but this one's a bit more emotional than other episodes. In this case, how the events of the episode start are that Steven and Lion are at the Big Donut, and Steven's being a bit indecisive about what he wants to get. Sadie suggests that maybe Lion should pick, since Steven's not really finding anything, and this prompts Lion to pretty much smoosh his face into a freezer for something called lion liquors. Steven thinks that those are gross and that, well, no one wants them, and he tries pulling Lion away from it, but as he does this, he notices that in the freezer next to the lion liquors are a bunch of bags with Sadie's name on them. It turns out these aren't really a product. These are actually lunches that Sadie's mother makes for her, and she just kind of puts them aside. And so when Steven asks her about them, she explains that her mom usually just makes them for her every day, but Sadie finds them embarrassing because, well, she's not a kid anymore, so she can make her own meals. Steven asks if he can take one, and Sadie says go ahead. And so he grabs one of the bags and brings it home, and he and Lion end up looking through the contents, which consists of a sandwich, a drink, I think, and a star-shaped cookie, which Steven thinks is cute and adorable, and that Sadie's mom has good taste for doing this stuff. However, as Steven looks through that, it does start making him think towards his own mom, like, what would she have done if she had made him lunch? What would she have put in, etc.? And as Steven thinks about this, he finally just asks, I wish I had known more about her, which this question ends up prompting Lion to get a little clingy, so to speak. It starts out small, but it gets bigger. Like in the beginning, like after Steven asks this, Lion just pushes his face into Steven's shoulder, which Steven takes as just him being a little affectionate. But then that night, when Steven wants to go to bed, Lion is insisting on sleeping in Steven's bed, which Steven doesn't like. When Steven actually does go to bed, he ends up dreaming that he's in a pink field where he can't breathe, and as he gets woken up by Pearl's voice, it turns out Lion is sleeping on top of him. Thankfully, he doesn't suffocate because Pearl pulls him out, and this will lead to a very funny scene where Steven asks, "Wait, Pearl, what were you doing here?" And Pearl says that she likes to watch Steven sleep sometimes, which is appropriately funny because even she knows it's awkward. And as a result, Steven ends up shooing her and Lion off, and he does go back to sleep proper, but the dream he has ultimately doesn't last very long before he gets pulled back into the lion field again. As a result of this, Steven does wake up again and manages to pull himself out from under Lion, but Lion is still trying to get closer to him, to the point where he actually starts intentionally acting cute to draw Steven in, and then when Steven goes in, he just pulls him into essentially a bear hug, for lack of a better term. And as Steven keeps trying to pull away, well, Lion starts getting a little bit aggressive. Not to the point where he gets violent, but as Steven tries pulling away, he pulls the claws out, and this finally prompts Steven to say enough, allowing him to get out of Lion's grasp and pretty much throw him outside for being a bad cat. However, Lion just starts laying down the charm something fierce as he starts making moaning noises and starts just looking at Steven with puppy dog eyes, which, yeah, as a puppy owner myself whose puppy likes to misbehave a lot, yeah, that works. That works so very well. As such, Steven ends up going outside and gives Lion a hug, pretty much saying, "Oh, it's okay, I could never stay mad at you." But as Steven is hugging Lion, Lion's mane glows where Steven's face is, and Steven's face goes into it, resulting in him going back to the field. Yeah, but turns out that wasn't actually a dream. It turns out within Lion's mane is a pocket dimension. One where you can't breathe, though there is clearly air. It's just probably not oxygen. Well, of course, when Steven sees this, well, first he starts messing around with it, but as Lion starts getting annoyed with his antics, Steven decides to further explore and actually go all the way into Lion's mane and wander around. As he wanders, he ends up finding a tree in the center of everything on its own little clear mound, and surrounding it seem to be possessions of his mother. There's a pink flag with a gem in the center of it with rose thorns jutting out. There's a bubbled gem that's floating by the tree. There's a chest. There's a picture of Rose and Greg, a t-shirt hanging off of a limb that says Mr. Universe, and among all of it is also, well, a videotape with Steven's name on it. Or more specifically, it says, "For Steven." This does make Steven wonder what the heck's going on, but he doesn't really have a lot of time to wonder this because, well, he needs oxygen, and the only way to get out of Lion's Mane is in the field surrounding the tree. As such, Steven takes a video, bolts, and he does end up tripping off of the hill and ends up falling out of Lion's Mane. As such, he still has the video, but since he doesn't really have a VCR to play it on, he ends up bringing it to the Big Donut because, well, he knows they have one from when he briefly worked there. As such, he ends up catching Sadie and Lars as they're going into they're unlocking the store for the day, and so Steven and Sadie go back and put the video into the VCR, and, well, yeah, the contents are a bit, well, let's just say that they kind of hit a little close to home. It turns out it's a home video that Steven's mom made. In this case, the video is just basically Rose and Greg just kind of goofing off. Rose filming Greg as he's just lying there on the beach while a seagull roosts on him. Greg pretty much doing an introduction for Steven saying, "Get ready, baby, I'm gonna be the coolest dad ever," and calling himself Mr. Universe. And the video ends with Rose actually talking directly to Steven, saying, "Look at this world, Steven. It's beautiful, and no life form ever has the same experience. They're all so different, unique, complex, yet simple, and it's just all amazing." And she then turns the camera around, and for the first time in the series, we actually see Rose Quartz. It's not an image, it's not a story, it's actually her talking. And it's her talking directly to Steven about how they both can't exist. That in order for Steven to exist, she of course has to vanish, but she'll always be a part of him. And every time he loves being himself or loves existing, that's Rose loving him. And it's just, and as Rose talks, Greg calls her off camera, and the last words Rose says to the camera are, "Take care of them, Steven," before setting it down and going over to Greg. And as we see her walking up, we see she has a protruding belly that both she and Greg lay their hands on before going in for a kiss as the video cuts out. As such, back at the Big Donuts, Lars comes back to check on Sadie and Steven since he and Sadie have to open up the store, and Sadie and Steven are actually in tears. Not sad, but definitely touched, as Steven takes the video, smiles, gives Lars a little pat, goes outside to see Lion, who was there waiting for him, and then gives him a hug, and the episode ends with Sadie calling her mom to talk to her about the lunches, which, it's sweet, and I like that. But now let's get to Alone Together, and this episode actually sort of introduces us to a new fusion. Well, not sort of, it really does, but we'll get to that. In this case, the gems are trying to teach Steven about how to fuse. And how they're doing this is by trying to get him to take part in dancing. And of course, as a big part of fusion is synchronization, hence why they dance. But unfortunately, Steven's just really not in tune with any of what they're doing. And the more they try, the more Steven just kind of fumbles. Not really failing, but not really keeping up to their pace either. As a result of this, the gems just kind of ponder if Steven can fuse at all, since he's half human, and in order for gems to fuse, they kind of need the whole hard light hologram bodies, since a gem's fusion is when their physical forms end up melding together, and their and their minds end up essentially interspersing, so to speak. And since Steven is half human, his body is organic, so they wonder if he can even fuse at all. Garnet thinks that, yeah, he can do it. Garnet thinks that he can do it. Amethyst says she doesn't know what could happen, but Pearl has her doubts. Steven, of course, just doesn't really know what to do, and later on he ends up talking to Connie about this while they're just hanging out on the beach and just chatting. However, as they're talking about the session with the gems, Connie thinks that Steven's lucky for being able to dance with the gems because, well, she can't really dance. She gets essentially stage fright. She can't really stand the idea of people just watching her while she's all alone and just kind of judging her. Steven ends up countering this by saying, "Well, no one's watching you now." And which even Connie says, "Well, Steven, you're staring at me." But Steven pretty much shifts gears and says, no, what I'm trying to say is, before he pulls out his phone, hits music and says, come dance with me. And as a result, Steven and Connie just start dancing. And honestly, it's a really cute scene. Just seeing them grooving and having fun, just doing their own thing while still being in sync. It's really just cutesy wootsy stuff about these two kids as they're just trying to having fun. And what I love is that both are clearly feeling the love, so to speak, as they're seeing each other. You can see them both blushing at the other as they're both just getting close, as they're both having fun. And in the midst of the dancing, Steven ends up fumbling, but Connie ends up catching him. And as they're close, they both blush and they both just start smiling. And then Steven's gem starts glowing. And it glows brighter and brighter and brighter. Until finally, Steven and Connie are engulfed in it. And when the light fades, someone new has taken their place. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time we are once more introduced to a new fusion. One of Steven's. In this case, I introduce you to Stevonnie, a fusion of Steven and Connie. And design-wise, I think Stevonnie looks pretty cool. They're essentially, well, as all fusions are, they're a mishmash of the individual beings that make them up. It's just that in this case, while the fusions between the gems are definitely a lot more creative and a lot more extravagant, so to speak, Stevonnie looks a bit more down to earth, but they also look a bit more extravagant, more well-toned. Like they have broader hips, they seem a bit skinnier. It looks essentially, well, let me put it this way. Steven and Connie are both very small, not very small, but they're children. They're short. And so when you see Stevonnie, they're essentially just it's like if you took Steven and Connie and pushed them together, and essentially, I guess the best way to describe it, it's like Stevonnie is two kids in a raincoat, minus the raincoat. And what makes it better is that you can still see qualities of Steven and Connie in Stevonnie's complexion. Like, they have Steven's nose and general hair texture, but their skin tone is definitely reminiscent of Connie. Their outfit definitely feels like a fusion of Steven and Connie's outfits. Like, they have Steven's shirt, but above the shirt is Connie's top. They have Steven's pants, which now look like short shorts, and the hair tone definitely still looks like Connie's. So I like that. And of course, since the whole root of Stevonnie is the Steven part, Steven's gem is located on Stevonnie's belly button. But so yeah, I think they look cool. Ultimately, it just looks dashing, I guess is the best way to put it. And the instant Stevonnie realizes what they are, they just start going nuts. Like, first Stevonnie gets all calm and rational, like, I'm a fusion. And then they start running around like an idiot, just having fun, before they decide, I have to show everyone, before running to the gems. And the gems' reactions all tend to vary. Pearl is just kind of in shock to the point where she has no idea how to react to Stevonnie. Amethyst is like, oh, this is really cool, how does it feel? And Garnet's ecstatic. I love it. One of my favorite parts in the episode is when the gems see Stevonnie and all of them look shocked. Like, Pearl and Amethyst are but Garnet's like, and then the next time you see her, she's just got the biggest grin on her face. As such, Amethyst, of course, is just all for Stevonnie doing their own thing, while Pearl thinks that maybe Stevonnie should unfuse right now, which even Stevonnie's shocked at since the gems wanted Steven to fuse. But Garnet, she puts in her 2 cents. And to quote her, she says, Stevonnie is not 2 people, and they are not 1 person. They are an experience. They have to make sure it's a good one, and now they should go have fun. And Stevonnie takes these words to heart as they just start running around, just acting like a big goofball and just enjoying themselves. Sorry, I don't really know how to say that. But which eventually results in Stevonnie taking a dive off of a cliff into the ocean below, just kind of just having fun. But in the midst of their frolicking, they start getting hungry. As such, they go to the Big Donut, which leads to an honestly amusing scene where Lars and Sadie are both attracted to Stevonnie, which I think is just kind of great. Like, they're both blushing, they have no idea how to talk to them, and when they give Stevonnie their order of 2 donuts, they say, no, it's on the house, and Stevani's like, oh, that's cool. Oh, but FYI, that's not a very good business practice before Stevani just walks out. However, as Stevani is reveling in the fruits of their labor, aka trying to enjoy the donuts, well, they start feeling a bit out of sorts. They start feeling like that they're alone. And what I like is that you can clearly tell that what Stevani is saying is kind of like a conversation between Steven and Connie from within Stevani. However, and as Stevani is just kind of trying to take it all in, eventually Sour Cream ends up walking up and, well, he's also blushing too, but he gives Stevani an invite for a dance that he's DJing for that's in that's in the warehouse on the wharf or on the beach or on the cliff or on a different cliff, whatever. It's that old abandoned warehouse that Steven and Amethyst did their stupid wrestling thing. As such, Stevani's like, oh sweet, let's go, and as such, when they do arrive, they find that that seems like a good party. Everyone's enjoying themselves, having fun, dancing and grooving to music. And Stevani, well, they just go all in as they just start dancing it up, just kind of moving at their own pace, just having a lot of fun. But like everyone else before, everyone's just kind of in awe of Stevani to the point where everyone stops dancing. And as Stevani finally notices this, they start to have a bit of a breakdown as they start to see everyone, just as they start seeing everyone and just start getting nervous. And then something strange happens. Like, the people just seem to fade away and are replaced by these big, large shadows. They're big, like, crystalline structures that seem to appear around Stevani. And as Stevani starts freaking out, a disco ball seems to surround them, closing them off. And, yeah, it's clear this is a hallucination, but there's something strange about it. Although the hallucination gets interrupted when someone else walks in. Another teenager who kind of fits into the stereotypical douchebag, cool kid motif named Kevin, who immediately starts hitting on Stevani, something that Stevani doesn't really like. As such, in the midst of their breakdown, Stevani ends up running off of the dance floor as they try to collect themselves, and once again, from inside, you can see Steven and Connie essentially just kind of struggling, and at the same time, you can see Stevani having a breakdown because of it, because, well, this is kind of feeding into Connie's own nervousness when she said that she wasn't comfortable with dances and people looking at her. And as Stevani even says, it's different if you were here, but you're not here. Or more specifically, you are here, but I still feel alone. Which, I do like that. I do kind of like that. It's like Stevani is talking to themselves, but at the same time, it's also a conversation between Steven and Connie, and Stevani really has no way, it kind of feels like that there's definitely a clashing of the identities that make Stevani up, and I find that very interesting. However, Kevin, being a douchebag, doesn't really see the signs that Stevani's in the middle of a breakdown, so he goes up to them and tries to continue hitting on them, and Stevani's like, okay, you know what, fine. You want to dance? Let's dance. As such, Stevani brings Kevin out to the dance floor, and Stevani just starts going nuts. Not even the fluid dancing they were doing before, just balls to the walls, insane dance moves. And as Kevin's just kind of freaking out, suddenly Stevani's gem starts glowing, and they once more explode into light and unfuse back into Steven and Connie. Something that causes everyone in the dance to freak out, and Kevin, of course, to run off. And as Steven and Connie are realizing that they've now unfused, well, they just start going nuts and having fun. The episode just sort of stops, I guess. I guess it's an ending? Don't quote me on that. But, yeah. Honestly, I think both episodes are really good. In the case of the Lion 3 video, and the Lion 3 episode, what I like about it is that it's not just a heart-to-heart... It's very heartfelt, to put it nicely. And what I think also makes it work is, for one thing, we finally get to see Rose as a character. Something that's been going on throughout the series up to this point is that Rose is sort of deified, if that makes any sense. Whenever anyone talks about Rose, they always talk about how she was as a leader, how they saw her, about how she always had the answers, how she always did this, did that. But the thing is, that's not the same as actually knowing Rose. It's telling a story there's telling a story. There's the difference between telling a story about someone and actually seeing that person. And while Rose probably did a lot of good things, ultimately we can only know so much about her based on everyone's based on everyone's tales. So to actually have an episode where we get a snippet of her, I like that. It opens up the foundation for what it opens up basically different avenues for where her character could go. And in this case, the first little bit we see is not her being all grandiose or majestic. It's just her being goofy. She's on the beach filming stuff, goofing around with Greg, having fun. In this case, we finally get to see a little bit of the person behind the legend. We see a Rose Quartz who's not this big grandiose leader who has all these big plans. We see a sweet woman with big pink curly hair who's marveling at everything like a child and telling her unborn child, I love you. I can't exist as long as you exist, but I will always love you and I will always treasure you. I think it's very sweet, and it's again just a little hint at things to come, at where things about where her character would go. And again, while we did have little things in other episodes about how people describe Rose, finally having a character to put to the stories, to finally see a person but that actually reacts like a person instead of just being this big time leader or big time hero that everyone calls her, says that she is. At the same time, it really does. It just helps to kind of complete the picture. It's not the whole picture, mind you. We still only have the tales, and this is just a minor snippet. But at the same time, it does help showcase that it was a person there, and this person did love Steven and wanted him to be happy. And I like that. I like that a lot. And it's just kind of nice seeing a bit of Steven's parents goofing off when they were still around and when they were still in a relationship. It's really nice. It's very sweet. And with the way things end, with Rose just telling Steven take care of them before running up to Greg and they both kiss as they both touch her stomach where Steven is, it's nice. It's just really nice. On top of that, it also raises more. What I also like about the episode, it also raises more questions about Lion. We already know that Lion is somewhat tied to Rose based on the cave, but now this makes it even more suspicious, as there were things in his mane that clearly were tied to Rose. Of course, there was the sword. We already knew that was in Lion's head. But then we had stuff like the flag, or the Mr. Universe t-shirt, or the bubble gem. We don't know why there's a bubble gem in Lion's mane. There just is. But at the same time, it's clear that these are all things that Rose put there, especially since there's a picture of herself and Greg, and we know that is something of Rose's because Greg had a similar picture in his garage. So yeah, there's only one other person who would have a picture like that. So it does make you wonder what the deal is of this place and what the connection is with Lion. And seeing all these little things in Lion's mane, well, let's just say that almost all of them come back in some way, shape, or form. We do learn later what the flag represents. Of course, there's a story behind the Mr. Universe T-shirt. We already know the story behind the picture. The sword, well, that kind of gives that's expanded on later. The chest, nothing happens with that. That's a spoiler, but nothing happens with that. Even Rebecca Sugar, I think, at one point said the only reason that it gets open later on is so that she can showcase that there is nothing important inside. But of course, that bubble gem. Why does this gem have to be put in Lion's mane? Why can't it be with the other gems? We don't know, but we're curious to find out, and I like that. It lays more foundation for future stories and definitely makes you curious where things will go. On top of that, there's also, again, we still have the sweet message, especially with the ending with Sadie calling her mom to tell her she can keep making the lunches, or the funny jokes with Pearl and how she apparently likes to watch Steven sleep, which I think is funny. And overall, it's a sweet episode. Very nice. It finally gives us a taste of who Rose Quartz is as a person, and does finally give us a face and a character to match the story. So I like that. Kudos on that. And now we have Alone Together. This one is a very hard episode to categorize, but I can safely say that I enjoyed it. In this case, for one thing, we not only get a new fusion, but it's a fusion for Steven, which not only is progression for him, but also opens up new avenues for character development, both for Steven and for Connie. And of course, it's through Stevani and their reactions to things. What I like about Stevani is, like many other fusions, they have their own personality that's very distinct of the beings that make them up. In this case, we see Stevani displaying a lot of Steven's enthusiasm and jubilance and lust for life and confidence, but all that is also tempered by Connie's essentially more down to earth attitude. By just how Connie likes to study things, how she likes to kind of take it all in, how Connie's more reserved. And Stevani does a good job at showcasing both sides of that personality and showcasing them intermingling. And that's actually something that I really do like about seeing Stevani in action. It kind of helps give us a window more on how fusions work. In this case, how this all comes together is, like I said, one of the things that I like about fusions is just kind of seeing how these two gems come together. But another cool thing about fusions are that, as Garnet put it, they're not two people, but they're not one person either. A fusion is essentially what happens when two gems are mixed together. And in the case of Stevani, they are a very interesting combination of Steven and Connie. They're not Steven, but they're not Connie. They're not Connie, but they're also not them. You can see bits of both characters in Stevani's demeanor and personality, and seeing how they both work off of each other. Again, going back to the donut scene, I love Stevani's reaction when Sadie just gave them donuts, and they're like, "Oh, really sweet," and then just unknowingly turning on the charm and saying, "Oh, by the way, that's a very terrible business practice." I love that. But at the same time, the confidence is still tempered. And then you see Connie's own insecurities mixing into Stevani. You see Stevani start feeling lonely, despite the fact that they're technically not alone. And as things go along, you can see Connie's loneliness just kind of start overriding things, because, well, despite the fact that Connie and Steven are technically together right now, Stevani's alone. Stevani doesn't have anyone. Stevani does not have someone to help them out, help them get more confident. And when they do get more confident, all it takes is pushing the right button, and Stevani starts having a freak out, which I think is a good way of showcasing more of Connie's insecurities. And on top of that, and as well as showcasing Steven and Connie have to deal with being a fusion. And I like seeing how things develop with Stevani as the episode goes along, especially when they go to the dance. Like, they go in there all confident and cocky and going like, "Yeah, we're gonna go have fun," but then the instant that everyone just starts staring at them, Stevani starts having a freak out, and then they start having that hallucination, which, minor spoiler, there is an explanation for why they hallucinate. And it isn't just because they were nervous. There is a bigger reason, which I'll get to much later on. But put simply, it makes it clear that there is that Connie, actually gives a window into Connie's personality in a way. That despite that she seems all kind and collected, you can see that the social anxiety that she's felt is still there. And sadly, while Steven's confidence can help temper it in Stevani, there is limits. And you start seeing that in Stevani. What I do like, though, is that when Kevin starts hitting on Stevani, Stevani just goes, "Okay, you know what? Fine, I'm just going to do my own thing." To pretty much say, "Screw you. You want to push me to do something I don't want to do? Well, then I'm just going to go all in." Essentially, they're going to pull some malicious compliance, which I'm all for. I do love how when Stevani just starts going all out, they eventually unfuse into Steven and Connie, because at this point they were not in sync. They were a hot mess at this. Eventually, they were gonna fall apart, and they did. And Steven and Connie were just happy to actually be with each other in the dance. And that's actually kind of the thing I like, when they do eventually unfuse. They are just like. They pretty much just. It looks like they're having happy tears, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." It's just. I don't really know where that goes. Essentially, like, Steven and Connie are not uncomfortable with fusion after this. They do it plenty of times before. They do it plenty of times after this episode. But I do kind of like the initial outing. It's clunky, it's awkward, but also fun and interesting. And again, And while the episode doesn't, like I said, while the episode doesn't really have an end, it just sort of stops. At the same time, what I do like is that it does give us a window not into fusion. Through Stevani, we're able to see just the mechanics of it, how it affects the individual beings that make it up, and how those individual beings can have an effect on the fusion itself. As we see Stevani showcasing characteristics of Steven and Connie, we see how the negative aspects of the personalities can have an effect on the fusion, as when we saw Stevani having an existential crisis, despite the fact that they were technically not alone. And on top of that, when they started having a panic attack, when things started getting wrong and they started hallucinating. I like that. And it makes you wonder where things are going. It not only offers character development for the individual characters, but also hints at something darker at play with the fusion. So which, again, does get expanded on later on. On top of that, we do get some nice stuff with Steven actually being able to fuse, which does open the door for future fusions down the line, though those are unfortunately much later down the line. But we'll get to that when we get to that. And of course, I loved seeing Garnet's reaction to Stevani, which again is a nice little hint there. Especially when she made a comment how she was actually really good at fusion. And of course, and again, well, I think my biggest complaint would be just how the episode doesn't really have an end. It just sort of stops. It doesn't really feel like it has a proper conclusion. It really just feels like Stevani has a freak out, goes nuts when Kevin tries prodding them, and then unfuses. And though overall, while the episode ending definitely is something to be desired, the rest of the episode is very interesting. It's nice seeing Stevani running around and showcasing this. We don't see a lot of their abilities in this episode, though to be fair, a lot of those abilities probably stem from Steven. Though again, Stevani gets more use later on, and we do see Stevani get stronger as the series goes along, much like Steven. So we'll see them get better later. But for their initial outing, it's fun, just nice seeing them having fun, goofing off. We get some nice stuff about how fusion works, how some kind of more character development for Steven and Connie, for Steven with his powers, Connie with character. We get some nice little moments. We get some cute moments. We also get some kind of uncomfortable moments, but good uncomfortable for episodes. Overall, I do still think it's a good episode. My only fault is that it feels like it just stops. So overall, I do think these are both good episodes. Lion 3, very nice, very touching. Finally, nice to see something about Rose, and all that. Finally, it's nice to see something about Rose that's not a story, but actually something that gives a character to the stories. And Alone Together is nice, and that introduces Stevani, helps establish fusion, does have some very interesting character moments with both Steven and Connie, does get a bit uncomfortable, and while I will get annoyed at how it just stops, it also at the same time does make you wonder where things are going to go, and how things can continue on from here. And just kind of leaves you wanting. Though I think both episodes do that actually, but in the good way. It makes you wanting in the sense that you want to tune in to see more. So, yeah, overall, both episodes I think are good. So, yeah, that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I'll see you next week. Take care.